People like you, jobless and poorly educated, aren't needed in this house." Those were the cruel words my mother-in-law hurled at me. Then she poured hot water on me. I screamed in pain. "It's burning! Please stop!" I couldn't believe what was happening. Her behavior left me in shock. Pouring hot water on someone is a horrific act, no matter the reason. Fortunately, I wasn't seriously burned, but it could have ended much worse. I was in disbelief. How could my mother-in-law do this to me? Even harder to process was the fact that her words weren't even true. I wasn't the one without a job. My husband, Jack, was. He had lost his position while I worked tirelessly to support the family. Yet there I stood, enduring her accusations and insults. Anger began to rise within me. I felt I'd reached my breaking point. I could no longer tolerate her behavior. I decided to stand up for myself. "If this is how you treat me, I'll leave. You've won," I told her. My mother-in-law didn't seem upset at all. In fact, she looked pleased and replied, "Finally, you're leaving. That makes my life easier." Her cold reaction made it clear she had no remorse for what she'd done. I realized I didn't want to stay in such a toxic environment. Without wasting any time, I packed my things and left. I returned to my parents' house, where I knew I'd be treated with kindness. What my mother-in-law didn't know was that I wasn't helpless at all. In reality, I had been keeping her household afloat financially after Jack lost his job. I had started trading stocks and was earning about $50,000 a month. I didn't need to rely on her or anyone else to survive. Even if she came to me later asking for money, I decided I wouldn't help her. She had treated me so horribly, and I didn't believe she deserved my kindness. She'd have to live with the consequences of her actions. I had been married to Jack for about 3 years. We met in university, where we both studied economics. After graduation, we landed jobs at different financial firms. Despite our busy schedules, we maintained our relationship for years. After dating for a while, Jack proposed. "Angela, I'll make you happy. Please marry me," he said. I believed him, thinking I'd have a happy life with him. But things turned out differently than I'd imagined. Looking back now, I'm glad I found the strength to leave. Sometimes, walking away from a bad situation is the best thing you can do for yourself. When Jack proposed, I eagerly said, "Yes." I was excited about the idea. We decided to get married, thinking we could build a happy life together. I was thrilled at the thought of starting a family and living as a married couple. But shortly after, Jack said something unexpected. "Hey, Angela," he began. "Would you consider quitting your job and moving into my mom's house with me?" I was taken aback. "What? I don't mind quitting my job, but we're newlyweds. I'd like us to live on our own." "I understand," he said, "but I'm worried about leaving my mom alone." "Don't worry. I'll make sure it's not too hard for you." Jack's father had passed away when he was in middle school, and he'd lived with his mom ever since. He was an only child and felt responsible for her well-being. Understanding his feelings, I agreed. "Okay," I said. "I'll live with you and your mom." 3 weeks later, we moved into Jack's family home. At first, my mother-in-law seemed happy about Jack's return. She greeted us with a smile, but as soon as she looked at me, her expression changed. The smile vanished, replaced by a cold, stern glare. It was clear she wasn't pleased with my presence. She muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't make out what it was. It sounded like she said, "You shouldn't have come here." I tried to ignore it and smiled, but deep down, I worried about how I'd manage living with her. Still, the first day passed without any major issues. The next morning, I was jolted awake by my mother-in-law's shouting, "You're still sleeping? Get up and make breakfast!" I glanced at the clock. It was only 5 a.m., still dark outside. I couldn't believe she wanted breakfast so early. Confused, I sat up. "Why so early?" I asked. Don't just lie around because you don't work, she scolded. I wasn't fully awake yet, but I didn't want to argue, so I got up and started preparing breakfast. As I cooked, she kept criticizing me. Hurry up, why are you so slow? She snapped sharply. I felt stressed and tried to speed up, but I kept going. Finally, after 20 minutes, breakfast was ready. Sorry for making you wait, I said politely. Finally done? Can't you be faster? She complained again. Her harsh words stung, but I stayed silent. I realized this was just the beginning of what living with her would be like. Sitting down to breakfast, I couldn't shake my anxiety. Living with my mother-in-law was proving to be far harder than I'd expected. I wanted to tell her it wasn't possible to cook any faster, but I just smiled and tried to let it go. However, she didn't stop with her complaints. What is this? The soup is too salty, she said, glaring at me. I don't think it's that salty, I replied cautiously. What did you say? Are you implying there's something wrong with my taste? Are you trying to kill me by serving such salty food? She barked. Her words stunned me. I had never thought or intended anything like that. Why was she accusing me so harshly? Her behavior was baffling and hurtful. Gathering my courage, I asked, Mother-in-law, why are you so hard on me? What are you talking about? I'm not hard on you, she retorted. Are you trying to make me look bad? No, that's not what I meant, I stammered, feeling overwhelmed by her attitude. Her pressure made it hard to continue the conversation. Enough. Go wash the dishes, then do the laundry, she ordered. There was no time to rest. From that day on, my mother-in-law continued to treat me harshly. Every day she criticized everything I did, leaving me mentally and physically exhausted. When I cleaned the house, she'd say, You missed the dust in the corners. When I did laundry, she'd point out, There's still a stain. Do you even know how to wash properly? After a month of this, I felt I couldn't take it anymore. I was at my breaking point. One night, I decided to talk to Jack. Jack, I need to speak with you, I began. Your mom says hurtful things to me every day, and it's really hard for me. Could you ask her to stop talking to me like that? I expected Jack to comfort me or at least respond, but he stayed silent. His silence upset me even more. Jack, do you hear me? I asked again, growing irritated. Then I noticed something odd. He looked pale, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how. What's wrong? Did something happen? I asked, concerned. Jack hesitated before speaking. Actually, I got fired from my job. I was in shock. What? Is this a joke? No, he said quietly. The company laid off a lot of employees due to declining profits, and I lost my job. I couldn't believe my ears. So you're unemployed now? I asked, trying to process the news. Yes, he said. As of tomorrow, I'm out of work. I sat in silence, at a loss for words. My world suddenly felt even heavier, and knowing I'd lose my job in a month, I realized I had little time. Fortunately, I used the knowledge I'd gained from my securities firm job to start trading stocks. It was challenging at first. I made mistakes. But over time, I improved and eventually started earning about $50,000 a month. Thanks to that, we didn't face financial hardship. I focused on supporting Jack and tried to ignore my mother-in-law's daily criticisms. The next day, I resolved to stay strong for Jack's sake. He had just lost his job, and I felt it was my duty to support him. My mother-in-law's cruel treatment continued, but I endured it for his sake. A month passed, and Jack was officially unemployed. At first, he made some effort to find a new job, but over time, he stayed home more often, coming up with excuses for not applying. Shouldn't you take job hunting more seriously? I suggested gently one day. I am looking, he replied, but it's hard to find a company that suits me. He didn't seem serious about it, and I felt frustrated, but I stayed quiet and continued supporting the household financially. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law's treatment of me worsened. She constantly criticized me, and I grew increasingly weary. At first, I thought I had to tolerate her behavior because Jack was unemployed. But over time, I stopped feeling that way. I began to feel drained and miserable every day. One morning, Jack left the house earlier than usual. It was unusual, and I hoped he was finally getting serious about finding a job. After he left, I started my usual chores. While I was cleaning, my mother-in-law sat on the couch in the living room sipping coffee. "Clean properly," she snapped. "Don't miss a single spot." I ignored her remarks and kept cleaning. Suddenly, she threw a tantrum and started yelling. "How dare you ignore me? You're just a daughter-in-law. You don't even have a proper job." Her shouting grew louder. I tried to stay calm and continued cleaning, but her anger only intensified. She stormed over to me and screamed even louder. "Jobless, useless people like you have no right to be here. Get out!" Before I could respond, she grabbed a pot of hot water she'd prepared for coffee and poured it on me. The hot water scalded my skin. "It's burning, please stop!" I screamed, shocked and in pain. That was the breaking point. I knew I could no longer live in such a toxic environment. Her behavior was cruel and unacceptable, and I realized something had to change. I screamed without thinking as my mother-in-law poured the hot water on me. Fortunately, the water wasn't boiling, so I didn't get seriously burned, but it could have been a terrible accident. Still, I was shaken by her actions. My mother-in-law, Carolyn, didn't seem concerned. Instead, she smirked and said, "I've been saying this all along. If you don't work, you don't belong here." Her words hurt deeply, but I was so tired of her behavior that I decided not to argue. I took a deep breath and said, "Fine, I'll leave." "Good," she replied, sounding almost pleased. "That makes my life easier. Leave quickly." I didn't want to stay in that toxic house a second longer. I packed my things as fast as I could and left that same day. I went straight to my parents' house. When I arrived, they were surprised to see me. They weren't expecting me, but they welcomed me warmly, making me feel at home. I waited, thinking Jack would call or text to check on me, but he didn't. Days turned into weeks, and I still heard nothing from him. I felt a bit lonely, but I decided not to reach out first. If he cared, he would have contacted me. A month passed, and I still hadn't heard from Jack. During that time, my feelings for him began to fade. I started thinking about divorce. It seemed like he no longer cared about me or our marriage. One early morning, the doorbell at my parents' house rang. I checked the monitor and was shocked to see Jack and my mother-in-law standing outside. What were they doing here after all this time? "Yes, what do you want?" I asked through the intercom. My mother-in-law shouted, "I've forgiven you! Come back home!" I was stunned. Forgiven me for what? I hadn't done anything wrong. Her words made no sense. I replied calmly but firmly, "Thank you for saying that, but I don't think I need forgiveness." I ended the intercom call, but they didn't leave. Instead, my mother-in-law started banging on the door, yelling, "Don't hang up! Let us in! Come back with us!" Worried that their shouting and noise might disturb the neighbors, I reluctantly opened the door and let them in. I led them to the living room and offered them a seat. Once they sat down, I asked, "Why are you here? What's going on?" I couldn't understand why they'd come now. This was the same mother-in-law who insisted I leave, and now she was telling me to return. Her behavior made no sense. "You told me to leave, and I can't just come back like that," I said firmly, still confused and annoyed by the situation. I stood my ground and made my feelings clear to her. She got angry and accused me of being childish. She claimed she had forgiven me and insisted I return to live in her house. She even said she was willing to let someone like me, jobless and uneducated, stay there. I couldn't hold back anymore. "I'm not the one who's jobless. Your son Jack is. And if I come back, you'll treat me horribly every day," I blurted out. Jack looked shocked when I said that, and my mother-in-law seemed confused. It was clear Jack hadn't told her he'd lost his job. Under pressure, Jack finally admitted the truth. He had been fired from his company. This led to a flood of apologies and excuses from Jack. He tried to explain that he had been relying on my income to keep us afloat financially. But my mother-in-law was furious. She had just learned about Jack's unemployment and now openly berated him. "Why didn't you tell me? What are we supposed to do now?" she shouted. Jack tried to calm her, saying, "It's fine for now. Angela's income is enough." His response only made things worse. My mother-in-law called him useless for not looking for a new job and scolded him even more. I couldn't believe my ears. All this time, I had been supporting both of them while Jack did nothing. I started questioning why I'd ever thought supporting him was a good idea. When my mother-in-law again suggested I return to live with them, I firmly refused. "No, I'm not coming back," I said. I couldn't imagine returning to that house after everything they'd put me through. Then the situation escalated. I brought up how my mother-in-law had poured hot water on me. Jack's face went pale. "What? She did that to you?" he asked in horror. "Yes," I said. "Ask her yourself." Jack turned to his mother. "Why did you do that to her?" She confessed. "Because she was ignoring me. That's why I did it." Her excuse infuriated me even more, and it sparked a heated argument between Jack and his mother. Their shouting became unbearable, so I stepped in as their host. I said, "Have this argument at your own house. You're in someone else's home and being too loud." Hearing my words, they calmed down slightly. Their bold and assertive demeanor softened, and they began pleading with me to return. They promised they wouldn't treat me badly anymore. Jack said he'd find a job, and my mother-in-law assured me she wouldn't cause trouble again. But I didn't believe them. Their promises felt empty. I knew better than to trust them after everything I'd been through. I told them honestly that their words meant nothing to me. I knew they'd take advantage of me again if I returned. Their silence confirmed my doubts. Without saying another word, I left the living room and went to my room, leaving them to reflect on their actions. About 6 minutes later, I returned to the living room. They were still sitting in the same spot, heads down, not saying a word. Irritated by their silence, I asked, "How long are you planning to sit here quietly?" "I don't care anymore." Instead of answering, Jack let out a deep sigh. He looked surprised when I handed him a piece of paper. It was a pre-filled divorce form, already signed by me. His face showed confusion as he stared at the document. "This is a divorce form," I said bluntly. "I've had enough. I can't stay married to someone who doesn't look for work and didn't even contact me after I left." Jack looked stunned. "Wait, please, this is too sudden," he said, clearly upset. His reaction annoyed me. He didn't seem to understand that his actions, or lack thereof, had led to this. He had ignored me when I needed support and left me to deal with everything on my own. "I've already made my decision," I said firmly. "No matter what you say, I'm divorcing you." Jack still couldn't believe it. "Isn't divorce too harsh?" he asked. "No, it's not harsh," I replied coldly. "This is your fault." I turned to his mother with the same cold tone. She was just as responsible for how poorly I'd been treated. She said nothing, but her expression showed resignation. In the end, Jack signed the divorce form, though he warned me, "Don't regret this later." But I felt relieved. "The one who might regret this is you," I said confidently. "I'll file for divorce myself. I don't need compensation. Just leave me alone and go home." With that, our marriage officially ended. It might seem harsh, but it was necessary to escape my mother-in-law's harassment and Jack's irresponsibility. 3 weeks later, while I was resting at my parents' house, my former mother-in-law called me. She sounded distressed. "The electricity and gas have been cut off," she said. Did you do something? I calmly explained. I stopped paying for you and Jack's living expenses. That's why. Her tone shifted. She tried to ask for my help. It was clear she hoped I'd step in and fix everything like I used to. I could have helped for maybe 2 months, but even that felt like too much. Her request seemed unreasonable, especially since we were no longer together and didn't live in the same house. I said no and suggested she ask Jack for help. After all, he had promised to find a job and support her. She didn't understand why I refused and begged me to help, trying to guilt-trip me by saying I was still her former daughter-in-law. I remained firm in my decision. I ended the call and blocked her number. After that, I decided to completely cut ties with my former mother-in-law, who constantly bothered me, and with Jack, who had always been unreliable. Once I made those changes, life at my parents' house became much more peaceful. I began focusing on myself and rebuilding my life. A few months later, while on vacation and checking stock charts, I received a message from Jack. He apologized for everything and admitted he had relied on me too much in the past. He also mentioned that he had recently found a job at a factory. Although he apologized, I had no interest in reconnecting with him or anyone from that part of my life. He mentioned that his mother still treated him poorly and asked if I'd come back. After reading his message, I knew there was no chance of reconciliation. I blocked his number too. About 5 months after the divorce, a friend introduced me to a new man. He was reliable, kind, and treated me well. Although he was older than me, we got along wonderfully. We didn't think about marriage right away, but I cherished the happy moments we shared. I decided to focus on the present and let go of the painful memories from my past.